There are moments in life when the very people you thought were anchors turn out to be weights, dragging you beneath the surface. You wonder why the betrayal happened, why the friend turned into an enemy, why the relationship crumbled when you gave it your all. But what if I told you it was not an accident? What if the storm that removed them was not the enemy, but the hand of God? For the God who calls you also protects you. He sees what you cannot see, hears conversations you will never hear, and knows the intentions hidden behind smiling faces. Sometimes his greatest act of love is not giving, but taking away. And when he takes the wrong people out of your life, it is not the end of your story. It is the unveiling of your destiny. The divine separation life often teaches us that not every presence in our lives is meant to stay, and not every connection is a covenant. Some people are assignments from God, others are distractions from the enemy, and some are simply seasons that expire when their purpose has been fulfilled. Yet the human heart clings. We cling to what is familiar. We cling to what once felt safe. We cling even when the Spirit is whispering that it's time to let go. But the God who knows the beginning from the end will not allow your destiny to be compromised by attachments that were never authored by him. He is the God of separation, the one who parts seas, divides light from darkness, and breaks chains that bind. When he removes someone from your life, it is not to diminish you, but to preserve the treasure he placed within you. Separation is never easy because it feels like tearing. Our emotions cry out, "Why, Lord? Why would you take away the very person I leaned on, trusted, or loved?" But separation is not always rejection. It is protection. If you could see the conversations spoken behind closed doors, if you could hear the thoughts never voiced aloud, you would thank God for closing the door. Many times, the people you thought were for you were secretly against you, and God, in his mercy, refused to let their poison seep deeper into your spirit. He intervened, not because you had the strength to walk away, but because he loved you too much to let you stay entangled. Think of Abraham, called out of Ur, commanded to leave his father's house, his relatives, and the familiar land of comfort. God's promise to make him a great nation was tied to separation. Why? Because the environment he was in could not sustain the promise placed within him. In the same way, your promise is too great to remain surrounded by those who cannot see it, cannot nurture it, or worse, would seek to sabotage it. Divine separation is God saying, "I am pulling you out to pull you up. I am removing them so I can raise you." Sometimes the wrong people are not obvious. They don't always come dressed as enemies. They smile, they applaud, they say all the right words, but their spirit is not aligned with yours. They drain instead of pour, they envy instead of celebrate, they compete instead of support. And you wonder why your spirit feels heavy after being around them. That heaviness is not random, it is discernment. The Spirit of God in you is signaling that something is off. Yet, because your heart wants to hold on, God himself steps in and orchestrates the divine separation. He shuts the door you kept trying to reopen, ends the relationship you kept trying to fix, silences the voice you kept trying to hear. It is his way of saying, "I know what you don't know. Trust me enough to let them go." There are seasons when God must strip you of counterfeit connections so that he can bring you into covenant connections. Counterfeits will look like the real thing, feel like the real thing, even sound like the real thing. But at the appointed time, their fruit reveals their root. And when their root is corruption, their fruit is destruction. God will not allow a counterfeit to sit where a covenant is meant to dwell. So yes, the friendship ends, the relationship breaks, the partnership dissolves, and your heart mourns. But heaven rejoices because the pruning has begun. Think of Lot, Abraham's nephew. For a time they walked together, prospered together, grew together. But there came a moment when the land could no longer sustain them both. Strife broke out, and God allowed the tension. Why? Because Lot was not meant to inherit what Abraham was called to receive, and until Lot separated, Abraham could not see the fullness of the promise. There are Lots in your life, people who cannot go with you into the next dimension of your destiny. You may love them, but they cannot carry the weight of what God has placed on you. Their season was real, but it was temporary. And the pain of separation is simply the price of elevation. Divine separation is not only about who leaves, but also about who stays. For when God removes, he also reveals. He shows you who was truly aligned with your destiny and who was merely along for the ride. Judas sat at the table with Jesus, dipped his hand in the same bowl, and yet harbored betrayal in his heart. It was only through divine separation that Judas revealed himself. The removal exposed what was hidden all along. And though betrayal feels like a wound, it is actually a gift. It unveils the false so the true may remain. Do not mistake the silence of lost voices as emptiness. In reality, it is space. Space for the right voices, the right counsel, the right alignment. You cannot pour new wine into old wineskins, and you cannot enter new seasons with old attachments. The wrong people will choke your vision, delay your progress, and dim your light. So when God separates, he is not subtracting from your destiny, he is multiplying it by subtraction. Every wrong person removed creates space for the right person to enter. Every closed door is an open gate to a higher calling. Every departure is a preparation for arrival. And here is the truth: separation is part of sanctification. To be set apart means some will walk away and some will be taken away. Holiness demands distance from what defiles. Purpose demands distance from what distracts. Destiny demands distance from what destroys. The God who calls you chosen will not leave you tangled with those who are toxic to your calling. He will cut ties you could not cut, end friendships you could not end, and expose motives you could not discern. For your destiny is too costly for him to allow contamination to continue. So the next time someone walks away, do not chase them. The next time someone betrays you, do not beg them. The next time God closes a door, do not try to reopen it. Because the one who writes your story knows exactly who belongs in each chapter. Some were only meant to be footnotes, not the main characters. And when their time is up, their exit is a gift, not a curse. The author of your life knows how to edit your circle until only the right voices remain. This is the divine separation, the holy work of God removing what does not belong, so he can establish what must remain. You may weep for a night, but joy comes in the morning. You may feel the sting of loss, but heaven celebrates the birth of freedom. For every wrong person removed, God is aligning you with the right people who will carry you, cover you, and celebrate you. Trust the pruning, embrace the separation, and know this: when God takes the wrong people out of your life, he is not punishing you, he is protecting you. The hidden mercy in loss has a way of piercing the human soul in ways nothing else can. It shakes your heart, it disturbs your peace, it makes you question the very ground beneath your feet. When someone you trusted walks away, when a relationship collapses, when betrayal cuts through you like a blade, you cry out, "Why, Lord, why would you let this happen? If you love me, why didn't you stop it?" But what you call loss, heaven often calls mercy. What looks like abandonment on earth is protection in eternity. The God who sees the beginning from the end knows that some doors must shut, some voices must fall silent, and some connections must end, because if they remained, they would destroy the destiny he planted inside you. Mercy is not always gentle. Sometimes it comes dressed as heartbreak. Sometimes it feels like rejection. Sometimes it tastes like bitter tears. But mercy is not about how it feels in the moment. It is about what it preserves in the long run. A surgeon's knife hurts, but it saves your life. A father's discipline stings, but it shapes your character. In the same way, the mercy of God sometimes wounds you to protect you. He lets the wrong person leave. He allows the betrayal to be revealed. He permits the friendship to collapse, not because he enjoys your pain, but because he refuses to let your purpose be strangled by the wrong presence. Think of Joseph, betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, forgotten in prison. To the human eye, it was loss stacked upon loss, heartbreak upon heartbreak. But hidden within every loss was the hand of mercy. Had Joseph remained with his brothers, their jealousy would have destroyed him. Had he stayed in his father's house, his destiny would have been smothered in comfort. It was betrayal that sent him to Egypt. It was false accusation that placed him in prison. But it was those very losses that positioned him to stand before Pharaoh. What felt like abandonment was in truth preservation. What looked like a setback was in fact a divine setup. Loss was the disguise that mercy wore to lead Joseph into his calling. This is why you cannot judge your life by one chapter. If you close the book too early, all you will see is pain. All you will feel is loss. But if you let God write the next page, you will realize the very thing that broke you was the thing that birthed you. You will see that the betrayal cleared the stage for true loyalty, that the rejection opened the door to true acceptance, that the loss carved out room for greater gain. What the enemy meant for evil, God turned for good, and what felt like cruelty was actually hidden mercy. The mercy of God is not only in who he allows to enter your life, but also in who he refuses to let stay. Imagine if Judas had remained faithful to Jesus. Imagine if his motives had stayed hidden. Judas was necessary not because of his loyalty, but because his betrayal exposed what was false and allowed the cross to be fulfilled. Jesus did not lose Judas. Jesus was protected from Judas. Likewise, when someone betrays you, it is not simply that you lost them. It is that God's mercy exposed them before their corruption could contaminate you further. Their departure was not your downfall, it was your deliverance. Loss has a strange way of humbling us, teaching us dependence, stripping us of pride. When you lose something you thought you couldn't live without, you discover the one you truly cannot live without, God himself. And perhaps this is the deepest mercy of all, for nothing drives us closer to his presence like pain does. Nothing awakens our spirit to his voice like loss does. Nothing clears away the fog of illusion like heartbreak does. In loss, he draws near. In loss, he whispers truths that comfort cannot teach. In loss, he reveals himself not just as a God who gives, but as a God who sustains when everything else is taken away. Consider Israel in the wilderness. They lost the comfort of Egypt, the familiarity of slavery, the certainty of food and shelter. To them it felt like death, but hidden within that loss was the greatest mercy. They were being set free from bondage. What felt like abandonment was actually deliverance. They cried for the onions and leeks of Egypt, not realizing God was leading them to a land flowing with milk and honey. Loss blinded them to the promise, but mercy was at work in the background, pulling them out of chains and into freedom. And so it is with you. You cry over who left, not realizing God is saving you from what you cannot yet see. You mourn over what ended, not realizing God is preparing what will begin. You question the silence of heaven, not realizing heaven has already spoken through the very act of removal. This is not for you. This cannot go with you. This will not define you. Mercy sometimes speaks loudest in absence. When loss comes, you have two choices, to see it as cruelty or to trust it as mercy. If you see it as cruelty, you will stay bitter, clinging to what is gone, paralyzed in the past. But if you trust it as mercy, you will rise stronger, wiser, and freer. You will begin to thank God not only for the doors he opened, but also for the doors he closed. You will learn to praise him not only for what he gave, but also for what he took. Because true faith is not just believing God when He adds to your life. It is trusting Him when He subtracts. Hidden mercy is also future mercy. What you lose now prevents greater pain later. That relationship God ended. It saved you from years of heartbreak. That friend who betrayed you, it saved you from deeper destruction down the road. That door that slammed shut, it saved you from walking into a trap you could not see. God's mercy doesn't just look at your today, it protects your tomorrow. And one day you will look back and say, if they had stayed, I would have been ruined. If that door opened, I would have been destroyed. If that connection continued, I would have missed my calling. Thank God for the mercy I could not see at the time. So yes, loss hurts. Yes, it bleeds. Yes, it leaves you questioning. But within the loss is the heartbeat of God. Within the silence is His whisper. Within the pain is His protection. And when you stand on the other side of it, you will realize the loss was never truly loss. It was exchange. God took away what could not stay to give you what could not be shaken. He removed what was false so He could establish what was true. He allowed the temporary to fade so He could reveal the eternal. The hidden mercy in loss is this: you did not lose, you were preserved. You were not abandoned, you were protected. You were not rejected, you were redirected. And the tears you cry today will one day turn into thanksgiving, because you will see what you could not see before. Every loss was the mercy of God in disguise. The cleansing of the circle, your destiny, is not only shaped by your faith, but also by your circle. The people around you are either your accelerators or your assassins. They either push you into purpose or pull you into destruction. That is why God, in His divine wisdom, will not allow your circle to remain polluted. He will cleanse it, prune it, and purify it, because your future is too costly to be surrounded by the wrong voices. The truth is, you can be anointed, called, gifted, and chosen, but if your circle is filled with envy, gossip, distraction, and betrayal, your destiny will be delayed. And so God steps in. He begins to sift the people around you, not because He is cruel, but because He is jealous for the purity of your calling. He loves you too much to let your promise be contaminated by poisonous connections. Every circle looks supportive on the surface, but hidden motives often live in silence. Not everyone who claps for you is celebrating you. Some clap to measure you, to study your weaknesses, to wait for your downfall. Not everyone who walks with you is loyal to you. Some are walking with you because they want to see how far you will go, and when you stumble, they are ready to rejoice. That is why divine cleansing is necessary. God will expose what you cannot see. He will stir conflict that reveals the true heart of those around you. He will orchestrate circumstances that peel away masks until every false face is revealed. It may hurt, but it is holy. It may feel like betrayal, but it is deliverance. Look at Jesus. Out of 12 disciples, one was a betrayer, one was a denier, and others abandoned Him at the cross. But God allowed it. Why? Because the cleansing of the circle is part of the process of purpose. Jesus had to endure Judas, but He could not build His destiny upon Judas. And so the betrayal was exposed and the circle was sifted until only the faithful remain. In the same way, there are Judases in your life who will play their part, but they cannot remain in your future. God will let them walk with you for a season, but then He will cleanse them out of your circle so that your destiny can be secured. Consider Gideon in the book of Judges. He began with 32,000 men ready to fight, but God said too many. He reduced the army to 10,000. Again, God said, still too many. Finally, Gideon was left with 300 men. Why would God take away so many? Because the circle matters. Victory was not about numbers, but purity. God would not allow fear, doubt, or divided hearts to contaminate the victory He had ordained. He cleansed the circle until only the right ones remained. And with 300, Gideon accomplished what 2,000 could not. The principle is clear. When God reduces your circle, it is not a loss, it is a cleansing. The fewer that remain, the purer the victory. You see, the wrong people in your circle will cost you your peace, your focus, and your destiny. Samson's circle included Delilah, and because he allowed her into his inner space, his strength was stolen, his vision was blinded, and his calling was delayed. Who you allow into your circle determines whether you rise or fall. David had Jonathan, a friend who strengthened his hand in God, but Saul, consumed by envy, tried to destroy him. Both were in his circle, but only one carried covenant loyalty. That is why God must cleanse your circle, to remove the Sauls and expose the Delilahs, so that only Jonathans remain. The cleansing of the circle is also a test of your obedience. Will you cling to what God is trying to cut? Will you fight to keep people God is trying to remove? Sometimes the delay in destiny is not the enemy. It is our refusal to release what God has already judged unfit. We beg God to bless us, but He cannot bless a circle He has not cleansed. We cry out for new levels, but new levels require new circles. And until we let go, God will continue to shake. He will shake relationships, friendships, partnerships, until what is false falls away and what is true remains. Do not fear the shaking. Do not mourn over every departure. Some people were never truly with you. They were just with what you had. They loved the benefits, not the bond. They loved the gift, not the giver. They loved the platform, not the person, and when the benefits ended, their loyalty disappeared. That is not betrayal. That is exposure, and exposure is cleansing. God allowed it so you would not carry counterfeit loyalty into the promised land. The cleansing of the circle is also preparation for multiplication. Once the wrong people are removed, the right people can enter. When Abraham separated from Lot, God immediately spoke the fullness of his promise. The vision became clear only after the circle was cleansed. Lot was not evil, but he was not chosen for that destiny. Likewise, there are people who are not necessarily bad, but they are not aligned with your calling. God removes them not because they are wicked, but because they are wrong for your future. And the moment they leave, clarity comes, peace comes, direction comes, the air clears, and suddenly you see where God is leading you. Your circle will either feed your fire or quench it. Surround yourself with cynics, and your faith will dwindle. Surround yourself with gossipers, and your spirit will grow polluted. Surround yourself with dreamers, visionaries, and prayer warriors, and your destiny will flourish. That is why God takes time to cleanse the circle, because the right people in your life are just as much a blessing as the wrong people leaving. And until He removes what is draining you, He cannot release what will sustain you. So when God begins cleansing your circle, don't panic. Don't chase those who walk away. Don't beg those who betray. Don't mourn over those who leave. Lift your eyes and understand. God is building a new circle around you. He is aligning you with destiny partners, covenant friends, loyal hearts who will carry you when you are weak and celebrate you when you rise. He is removing envy and replacing it with encouragement. He is removing betrayal and replacing it with loyalty. He is removing distraction and replacing it with focus. The circle is changing, but it is changing for your good. This is the cleansing of the circle. It is not punishment. It is purification. It is not rejection. It is redirection. It is not cruelty. It is covenant protection, and though it may hurt, it will heal. Though it may sting, it will save. For your circle is the soil of your destiny, and God loves you too much to let your roots be poisoned. He will cleanse, He will prune, He will separate, until only the true remain. And when you step into your next season, you will look around and see that every voice is aligned, every heart is pure, every companion is faithful, and then you will know the cleansing was worth it. The principle of pruning in the kingdom of God: growth does not come without cutting, and increase does not come without loss. Every vine that bears fruit must be pruned so that it may bear even more. This is the principle of pruning. God cuts not to destroy, but to multiply. He removes not to diminish, but to expand. Yet to the human heart, pruning feels like pain. It feels like rejection, betrayal, and loss. But in heaven's perspective, pruning is preparation. Just as a gardener trims branches to ensure a harvest, God prunes relationships, opportunities, and attachments to ensure that your destiny flourishes. You see, if he left every branch uncut, you would grow wild but not fruitful, busy but not effective, full of leaves but empty of fruit. Pruning removes what looks alive but produces no harvest. It clears away the excess so that the essential can thrive. We often cry out for more, but we resist the process that produces more. We ask God for abundance, but we fight when he begins to prune. We say, Lord, enlarge my territory. And then we mourn when he begins cutting away people, places, and habits that cannot go with us into that territory. But pruning is not God's anger. It is his strategy. He sees the weight of branches you cannot carry. He sees the drain of connections you cannot afford. He sees the distractions disguised as support, the burdens disguised as blessings. And so he prunes, not because he does not love you, but because he loves you too much to leave you unfruitful. Consider Jesus' words in John 15. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away, and every branch that bears fruit, he prunes that it may bear more fruit. Notice this, pruning is not punishment for failing, but the reward of bearing fruit. If you are being pruned, it means you have already proven faithful. The gardener does not waste time pruning dead branches. He prunes the ones with potential. That means if God is cutting away from your life, it is because he has seen fruit in you, and he is preparing you for even greater harvest. The very fact that you feel loss may be the greatest evidence that you are chosen for increase. But pruning hurts because it removes what we thought we needed. It takes away what we wanted to keep. Sometimes God prunes people out of your life, friends, partners, even family members, because their presence, though familiar, hinders your future. Other times he prunes opportunities, shutting doors you thought were the answer to your prayers. And sometimes he prunes habits, cutting away behaviors and comforts that feed your flesh but starve your spirit. Whatever the form, pruning always feels like subtraction, but in truth it is multiplication by divine mathematics. Less of what drains, more of what sustains. Less of what hinders, more of what empowers. Less of what is temporary, more of what is eternal. Think of Gideon's army reduced from 2,000 to 300. At first glance, it looked like loss. How can 300 fight an army? But in heaven's perspective, it was pruning. God cut away the fearful and the uncommitted so that only the pure and the strong remained. And with 300, Gideon won the battle. That is the principle of pruning. Less is sometimes more. Fewer people, deeper loyalty. Fewer opportunities, greater clarity. Fewer distractions, sharper focus. What looks like a step backward is actually a leap forward because pruning removes the excess weight that was slowing you down. Even in nature, pruning is essential. A vine that is never pruned becomes tangled, choked by its own branches, unable to breathe, unable to produce. But when the gardener cuts, the vine flourishes. In the same way, your destiny cannot survive unchecked. If God does not cut away the branches of compromise, fear, and distraction, they will strangle your calling. So he intervenes, he prunes, he cuts ties you wanted to keep. He ends friendships you tried to save. He closes doors you begged to remain open, and though your tears fall, he whispers, trust me, this cut is for your growth, this removal is for your future, this pruning is for your fruit. Pruning is also about timing. A branch may look healthy in one season, but become a hindrance in the next. Some people, some opportunities, some places were right for a moment, but wrong for where God is leading you now. And so he prunes, not because they were evil, but because their season is over. To cling to what God has cut is to choke your own growth. To fight against pruning is to resist abundance. The wise do not mourn pruning, they embrace it. They understand that every cut is the sound of destiny being sharpened. The principle of pruning also reveals trust. Do you trust the gardener enough to let him cut what you cannot see? Do you believe that his knife is not meant to harm but to heal? Pruning tests your faith because you cannot always understand why God removes what he removes. You may cry out, Lord, why did you take that person? Why did you shut that door? Why did you let that opportunity pass? And the answer may not come immediately. But later, when the fruit appears, you will look back and understand. Had that branch remained, it would have drained your strength. Had that door stayed open, it would have led to destruction. Had that person stayed close, they would have sabotaged your destiny. What felt like pain was actually protection. What looked like loss was actually life. Look at Joseph again. He was pruned from his family, pruned from his freedom, pruned from his reputation. Every cut looked like tragedy, but in the end, every cut positioned him for fruitfulness. Had he not been cut from his brothers, he would never have reached Egypt. Had he not been cut from Potiphar's house, he would never have reached Pharaoh's court. Every cut was pruning, and every pruning produced purpose. Even Jesus endured pruning. He was stripped of followers who walked away when his teachings became too hard. He was betrayed by Judas, denied by Peter, abandoned by many. His circle was pruned until only a few faithful remained at the cross. And yet, through that pruning came the greatest harvest, salvation for the world. If the Son of God was pruned, shall we not also endure it? And if pruning produced glory for him, shall it not also produce glory for us? So do not fear the knife of God. Do not mourn the branches that fall. Do not cling to what he has cut, for the gardener knows what you need better than you do. He knows the branches that steal your strength, the leaves that drain your life, the roots that hinder your growth. And when he cuts with precision, he cuts with love, he cuts with eternity in mind. The principle of pruning is this: what is removed is not your end, but your beginning. What is taken is not your ruin, but your release. Every cut is a step toward fruitfulness. Every pruning is preparation for abundance. So lift your head, wipe your tears, and thank the gardener for loving you enough to prune you. Because when the season of cutting is over, the season of fruit will come. And when it comes, you will see that every cut was worth it. Every loss was gain. Every pruning was mercy in disguise. The greater exchange, when God takes something from your life, he never leaves you empty. When he removes the wrong people, he does not leave a void. He makes space for the right ones. This is the mystery of the greater exchange. Every subtraction in God leads to multiplication. Every loss leads to gain. Every ending paves the way for a beginning. But to the human heart, it seldom feels that way. When someone leaves, it feels like abandonment. When a relationship collapses, it feels like failure. When a friend betrays, it feels like devastation. Yet heaven whispers, this is not the end. This is the exchange. What you thought was loss was actually the preparation for something better, something stronger, something eternal. God is not just the God who takes. He is the God who restores, the God who replaces, the God who redeems. He never leaves his children with less. He always leads them into more. The greater exchange is a divine law woven throughout Scripture. For every Judas who leaves, God raises a John who remains. For every Saul who falls, he raises a David to rise. For every Ishmael removed, he establishes an Isaac. Whenever God clears away the counterfeit, it is to establish the covenant. He will not let you remain bound to what cannot carry your destiny. Instead, he removes it so that he can align you with what will strengthen and sustain you. The removal feels like loss, but the exchange is gain, and the gain is always greater than what was lost. Think of Job, stripped of his children, his possessions, his health. To the eye of the world, he was ruined. His friends mocked him. His wife told him to curse God and die. But Job held on. He did not understand the trial, but he trusted the hand of God. And when the test was over, the exchange came. The Lord restored him, gave him double what he had lost, blessed his latter days more than his former days. Job's story reminds us that loss is never final when God is in the equation. What he takes, he replaces. What he prunes, he multiplies. What he allows to be stripped away, he restores in greater measure. The principle of the greater exchange is this: the latter is always greater than the former when God is the one writing your story. The exchange is also seen in the life of Ruth. She lost her husband, her home, her sense of security. By all appearances, her life was over, but hidden within her loss was a divine setup. God exchanged her pain for purpose, her emptiness for fullness. Through her loyalty to Naomi, she stepped into a field where destiny awaited her. Boaz became her redeemer, and through that lineage came David, and eventually the Messiah himself. Ruth's story began with loss, but it ended with legacy. That is the greater exchange. The pain of one chapter becomes the foundation for the glory of the next. Sometimes we mistake God's exchange as punishment. We cry out, "Lord, why did you let them leave? Why did you close this door? Why did you take this from me?" But heaven answers, "Because I have something better." You prayed for loyalty, and God removed betrayal. You prayed for peace, and God cut off chaos. You prayed for destiny, and God cleansed your circle. The exchange may hurt in the moment, but in time it reveals itself as mercy. It shows you that what left was never meant to stay, and what is coming is far greater than what was lost. Consider the disciples of Jesus. When he was crucified, they thought it was over. They mourned the loss of their master, their teacher, their friend. But what they thought was the end was the greatest exchange in history. Through his death came life. Through his loss came victory. Through his cross came resurrection. The greatest sorrow became the greatest glory. The grave looked like finality, but it was only the doorway to eternity. And through that exchange, you and I were given salvation. If God can take the cross and turn it into resurrection, then surely he can take your loss and turn it into gain. The greater exchange also reminds us that God does not settle for replacements. He gives upgrades. He doesn't just give you another friend, he gives you a true friend. He doesn't just give you another opportunity, he gives you the right opportunity. He doesn't just give you another relationship, he gives you one built on covenant, not convenience. God's exchange is not equal, it is greater. For every counterfeit removed, the covenant revealed will surpass it in glory. For every door closed, the door opened will lead to greater purpose. For every betrayal endured, the loyalty that comes will outweigh the pain. This is why you cannot cling to what God has cut away, because what he is preparing is far better than what you are mourning, but the greater exchange requires faith, faith to let go before you see what is next. Faith to trust the unseen hand of God. Faith to believe that what looks like empty space is actually preparation for fullness. Abraham had to let go of Lot before the full vision was revealed. Moses had to leave Pharaoh's palace before he could lead God's people. Paul had to lose his sight before he could see his calling. Every great exchange requires surrender, and until you release what God has removed, you cannot receive what he has prepared. The danger is when we try to hold on to what God has already exchanged. We chase after Judas when God is sending John. We mourn over Saul when God is raising David. We cling to Ishmael when God is birthing Isaac. And in doing so, we delay our own destiny. The secret is to let go quickly, to trust deeply, to believe boldly. For the God who began the exchange will complete it. And when he does, you will see that the gain outweighs the pain. Your life is not defined by what left. It is defined by what remains and what is to come. If people walked away, it means they were not meant to carry the weight of your calling. If opportunities closed, it means they were not aligned with your purpose. If relationships ended, it means they were not built for your future. God's exchange is always intentional, always strategic, always for your good. And when the right people enter, when the right doors open, when the right opportunities appear, you will look back and say, "This is why God had to remove them. This is why the loss was necessary. This is why I had to endure the pain, because the exchange was worth it." This is the greater exchange. God takes away the wrong to establish the right. He removes the temporary to reveal the eternal. He strips away the counterfeit to anchor you in the covenant. And though the process is painful, the outcome is glorious. So do not mourn too long over what is gone. Lift your eyes, open your hands, and prepare your heart, because the God of exchange is about to fill your life with more than you lost, greater than you dreamed, and better than you imagined. And when it comes, you will see that every tear, every cut, every loss was not the end. It was the beginning of abundance.